You've got ideas, you've got ambition, you've got no time, or so you think. I'm Marissa Lonick, and I help busy moms with big dreams and no time. Join me each week as I dive into time management strategies, goal setting and achieving framework, and inspiring guests who are juggling mom life, work life, fill in the blank life. Dreams don't work unless you do, and just because you're a mom doesn't mean you can't still make it happen, whatever it means to you. Welcome to the Mama Work It podcast. Hello, mamas. Welcome back to another episode of the Mama Work It podcast. I'm so excited you're here. Today on the show, we've got presenter and author Jen Rafferty. Jen started her teaching career as a middle school teacher in Central New York for 15 years. She founded Empowered Educator in 2020 as a response to teacher burnout during the pandemic. Jen is a certified emotional intelligence practitioner and is currently pursuing her Ph.D. in educational psychology. Since its inception, Empowered Educator has reached teachers and school leaders all over the world. Jen has been featured in Authority Magazine, Medium, Thrive Global, Voyage MIA, and is a TEDx speaker. She's also the author of the Amazon bestseller, A Place in the Staff, Finding Your Way as a Music Teacher. I cannot wait to dive into today's topic. Jen, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to talk with you.
Yeah, well, good. So I know I just read your bio, your introduction, but I always love to hear straight from our guest is voice. Tell us more about you, like what really led you to this journey?
So, there's lots of places I can start. I guess the easiest place to start is right before the pandemic, when I thought everything was okay and I had an idea of where, my life was going. I had just published my book in December of 2019. And my husband and I at the time decided we were going to get a divorce. And I moved out of my house the weekend the world shut down. So that was quite an experience, an unexpected shift of things. And while everyone was kind of finding their footing in this new reality, I had to rebuild my identity in a lot of ways. I was no longer a wife. I was, home with my two kids. So I was momming differently. I was also homeschooling. I was trying to teach music virtually, which was super weird. And I was in a new neighborhood. So everything I was the day before, I just wasn't all of a sudden. So I had to really rebuild and grieve and mourn. And I learned a lot about myself over the next 2 years. And what I started to discover was the more I looked within, the clearer the path became. And, I am a huge nerd at heart. So learning is definitely just my jam. So starting my PhD was something that I really wanted to pursue. I was homeschooling my kids in the school year 2020 to 2021. And I decided that I wanted to share my knowledge through my coursework, but also through my certifications, through my emotional intelligence practitionership, through the mindset work that I was doing, and all of the cool stuff I was learning about cognitive neuroscience, and how, if we understood our brains a little bit better, we can show up better for our kids. And the best way that I knew how to do that was to teach teachers and school leaders. So Empowered Educator was born. And that's kind of where I am now. I work with teachers and school leaders, lots of whom are moms, who are just trying to figure out how to live differently without the burnout and the stress and the frustration and the overwhelm and the chronic exhaustion. There is another way.
Yeah, I bet. I actually started my career as a teacher. I wasn't a mom when I was a teacher, but I think a lot of women go into teaching because it's a wonderful schedule to have when you have kids, right? And not only, of course, I'm sure there are other reasons, but I think it's part of it. And I think what a lot of women don't realize is it's a wonderful schedule on paper, but there's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes, right? When you are an educator, there's a lot of unnoticed, undocumented work that has to happen that you have to squeeze into your life when you thought, right, before entering that field that that was your free time. So I can totally see where burnout might be an ongoing kind of issue for this population.
Absolutely. And it's not just the time that we devote to our profession as teachers, but it's the emotional spaces that is all encompassing sometimes. And I think especially as moms, I have my own two children right now. They're 8 and 10, going on, 14 and 16. But they we come into a space where we feel responsible for other people's emotions. There is this martyrdom that we take on as women, and as women who are also teachers and moms, and the more that we try to take on everyone else's stuff, the less we have for ourselves. And so, one of the big messages that I share and that I'm constantly living myself is the most generous thing that we can do for other people, including our kids, our families, is take care of ourselves. And that's kind of a radical thing to think about once we're starting this work.
Jen, I couldn't agree more. Say it again for the people in the back.
For the people in the back, the most generous thing you can do for other people is take care of yourself.
Yes.
100%, hands down. There's no gray. Period. End of conversation. This is how we really make significant change, not just in our ability to hold space for the people who need us, but also model a different paradigm for the kids who are watching us. Because right now, when we are living in burnout, the kids especially are watching the adults around them live in burnout and use that as a model to how they're supposed to live their life.
Yeah. Oh, 1,000%. I feel like we could mic drop and close the episode right now, but we have so
That's
much
it, we're done
we
now.
have so we have so much more to say, so we won't. But yeah, this was a huge shift for me personally. It happens for my clients a lot. I mean, it is a shift that takes work to realize oftentimes, but once you kind of cross over, it's like your whole life changes for the better. So I'm a fan. All right, well, let's dive in a little bit more to our topic here. So, positive psychology versus toxic positivity. First things first, tell us your interpretation of both of these terms. I'm curious.
Sure. Well, toxic positivity is often a phrase I hear a lot in the education world, where we kind of just put rainbows and butterflies over everything and we're like, it's fine. It's totally fine. Everything's fine. Look at the positive side, guys, silver linings and all of that. And the problem with doing that is we don't actually acknowledge the obstacles and problems, and most importantly, the feelings that exist because of them. And when we have this toxic positivity, what happens is it becomes this false sense of resilience, which actually is emotional bypass. And what happens physically to us when we bypass our emotions is that it's stored somewhere in our body. Our thoughts happen in our mind, feelings happen in our body. And if we're unable to, first of all, acknowledge and then release the emotions, they just hang out there. they're just there until they get released. And they, unfortunately, if we don't deal with them, get released in ways where we have outbursts, or we're short tempered, or it becomes habitual ways to deal with our stress in our body, such as overeating or undereating. We can't sleep. We sleep too much. You get sick, or your back goes out, right? We're in chronic pain. All of these things happen grossly in part because of unprocessed emotions. So just like sticking butterflies and rainbows on problems is the complete opposite way to move forward, because your body needs to process emotions. Positive psychology, on the other hand, takes a look at reframe. And actually, it's funny because now recently, even the time when we first spoke to what I'm doing now, I don't even like to call it positive psychology anymore, even though that's like the general clinical term, and there's a lot of really good stuff there. I often talk more about alignment now, because when we're aligned, it doesn't always necessarily have to be positive. It usually is. But when we make aligned choices, aligned thinking, we change our beliefs so that they're aligned with not only who we are, but who we want to be, then all of a sudden things start to fall into place. And it might not always feel good at first, but it's moving you forward in a direction of how you want to feel.
Yeah. You're more authentic self in this way, right? You're showing
Absolutely.
up as your true self versus I had this thought when you were when you were saying putting the butterfly and the rainbows of like decorating something. You're almost like decorating the feelings, right? To make them look prettier, but you're not actually like getting down to the core. You're not actually like scrubbing down, right? Cleaning the surface. You're just kind of like putting some surface clean stuff on there to make it look clean, but it's really not.
Right. And then we're wondering why we're feeling all this pressure to hold it together, which like isn't really a thing either, but it's because all of these band-aids are put on what the actual problems are in an effort to bypass emotion or an
Yeah.
effort to present in a certain way. But the truth is, unless you go deep and you express yourself and you regulate your nervous system in a way that feels clean and clear of that emotion, you're actually not able to get to a point of healthy ease and relaxation and calm.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of times people hear things like this and they're like, oh, that's so scientific or that's so like over my head. It's not that complicated, everybody. It's not that complicated. It's really not. Like, this is so simple. It's not easy always to kind of get into the habit to do, but it's so simple. And there's just such small things that we're going to talk about in today's episode that you can be doing to really heal, to feel these feels, to uncover them and not band-aid them consistently so that you can get to a place of alignment of that positive psychology versus the toxic positivity. So, where do you see this specifically showing up for moms, this toxic positivity?
Oh, I think it's in every facet of their life, right? Because, we have this uh we it's in the air that we breathe, that we have to, again, keep it all together, right? We have to keep all of our ducks in a row. So it's having the job that it's great, it's having the 2.5 kids that are also thriving and doing great, and we're making sure that we're feeding them all the healthy foods, and we're getting to them to their soccer practice and their show rehearsals and this, that, and the other, their piano lessons. And then we have to make time for our partners, right? And make sure that we are a certain way and available emotionally for them. Plus, we have this guilt looming, I think, and I'm speaking generally, of like, I'm supposed to be taking care of myself, so I will, maybe sneak out or like steal some time to go have a drink with my friends or go out to see a movie or get my nails done. But underneath all of that is this societal pressure that is actually a facade. It doesn't actually exist. And without having a keen awareness as to what's going on, we perpetuate that. And conversations like this are so important because, again, if you're operating under the fundamental principle of the most generous thing I can do for my family, my partner, my kids, is to take care of myself, and your emotional state is the most important thing, then everything changes, because you go about all of those different facets in your life with a new set of glasses on, and you're making
Mhm.
decisions in a way that's aligned with, how do I want to feel? So when you wake up in the morning, instead of thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, like I have all of these things to do today, a big checklist, what would happen? What would shift if your first question was, how do I want to feel today? And then start to make decisions that align with that feeling. How would you show up differently for your partner, for your kids, at your job, with your friends? Uh, that's the way we actually start to make change. And to your point earlier, that it doesn't have to be so scientific, it's not. It's not. And another piece about this too, it's understanding your biology. This is your brain is created to keep you alive, to keep you safe. And the way that you've been functioning up until now, your brain's done a great job keeping you alive in that stressful state. So, part of it is also being connected to these emotional addictions of stress, worry, anxiety, pressure that make it difficult sometimes to step out of that.
Yeah. I love that you said that because I think self-awareness is such a key to operating in alignment to like really showing up as your best self, I will tell you, like, all of the examples you were saying earlier, I struggled with that when I became a mom. I was definitely from the outside looking in, I looked like I had it all together. Internally, I felt like a hot mess, right? Like externally, she's got a great job. She's got two great kids. She's got childcare. Her house is clean most of the time. Like she's married, happily married, all these things. And internally, I was like, something's off. Something's off, right? Something was not working. I would get to the point of like that burnout phase, put a band-aid on the problem, practice some self-care by going out and getting like a mani-pedi or a lunch date with a friend. And by the way, those are absolutely ways to practice self-care, but I was waiting too long. And I was coming at them from a place, like you said, of not sort of getting ahead of the problem. And so I was masking it in a way, and totally can understand. And I think so many moms listening can agree and empathize and are living this because it's so like normal out there. It's almost like all the memes you see, all the things you see are like, oh, you haven't slept, you're not going to sleep for 15 years, you're a mom, haha, or like, oh, you're tired all the time, well, that's normal, like wear it as a badge of honor, or you're busy AF, totally normal. Like these are not the things that I wanted to live my life in this way. And I was also ignoring the fact that, and I think many of our listeners are, we're ambitious. We want to grow in our careers. We want to publish books. We want to speak on TED stages, all of these things. And we feel this pressure that for the next 5, 10, 15 years, we can't, because we have to show up as this type of mom or this type of partner. And I'm here, and I know you're here, Jen. We got to break the stigma. Like you can have it all. You can have this life and that life together harmoniously, simultaneously. And it does start, like you said, with being generous with yourself, with putting yourself first in that way.
Oh, 100%. And there's so many different places and spaces I can go with what you were just saying. But I think the loudest thing for me is that just because it's normal and widely accepted does not mean that it is okay. And
Yeah.
that voice that you were describing, of that you just had that feeling like something wasn't working, something wasn't right. That's the stuff we are so trained not to trust ourselves, especially as women, not to trust ourselves, not to trust our bodies. We go to the doctor and we talking about, I have stomach cramps. Oh, well, it must be your period. You're on your period. No, listen to me, something's wrong. I know my body, something's wrong. And so often we are told it's in our head, we're delusional, we're too emotional, but no. Again, for the people in the back, no, you are your own best guru. You know yourself better than anybody else. And it is learning that self-trust and that self-love and that you are worthy enough to trust yourself and your instincts is how you're going to start making those decisions. Because you're totally right, Marissa, that that self-awareness is the key, because you can't change something you don't notice. So, when you have that dip of emotion or that physical feeling, that pit in your stomach, that something's not right, listen. Your body is talking to you all the time. But the problem is we are just terrible listeners. We live up, from the neck up, and we're in our heads constantly, but that's not where the emotions lie. That's not where our intuition is. We know that gut feeling, and you now have an opportunity to give yourself permission to listen to it, because that's correct. That's always correct.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important. And I think we get caught up in the hustle bustle everyday grind where we don't even give ourselves the 30 seconds to hear what's going on. We don't even know how, like, we're uncomfortable with the pause, right? Anytime you get a free minute, what's like your first go-to thing? And maybe it's not for you at this stage, maybe it's not for me at this stage, but it has been, hey, I'm just going to pick up my phone and scroll here or do something mindless to fill the time. Like it's almost uncomfortable to be alone with yourself and think about those things, or not think, and just let kind of the clarity come through. So that permission, it can start with what, 30 seconds, 60 seconds a day of really committing to that. and like massive change can happen.
Absolutely. And a simple breathing exercise is so easy to get started with something like that because you're right. A manicure and a massage are wonderful ways to do these top level high self-care, but then what happens the next day, right? And like this is the stuff that we need to sustain and do this introverted work because that makes everything else work. So something as simple as breathing, here's the thing, and this is some of the pushback and resistance that I get for people who have busy minds, and I am a former busy mind, like go do fill the time. I can't sit by myself. I have too much to think about. Meditating, you're crazy. I can't do something like that's insane. So I'm recovering, busy minds right now. But what happens is when you start small and you just focus on your breath and you focus on your body, again, that creates a pathway for you to then listen to your body and trust your body. And that is going to be the most important thing to direct you of what to do next, not just for yourself, but for your kids and your job and all of the other places and spaces where you need to be. So for me, and this is what I encourage the people that I work with to do, is I actually set 4 alarms in my phone every single day that go off. And it's like, hey girl, don't forget to breathe. So what I do is I stop what I'm doing, put my hand to my heart. I like to do that because it just connects me with my body. I close my eyes and I do 3 rounds of a box breath, which is just inhale for 4, pause for 4, exhale for 4, pause for 4. And I'm sure many of your listeners are familiar with this. And it's not just to feel relaxed. Sometimes that's a nice side effect, but what happens is you're interrupting your day. You're interrupting your autopilot. You're interrupting your default of stress and pressure and overwhelm, and you get to notice, what are you thinking right now? Is there tension in my body? What was I feeling in that moment? And unless you are interrupting yourself throughout the day, nothing's going to change, because it doesn't matter how many massages you get or mani-pedis you get, or if you have a meditation practice in the morning. If you're not doing something during the day when your life is actually happening, change isn't going to happen very quickly. So this is a really easy way to just, and honestly, my kids do it too. They know like, oh, mom's breathing again. Like, let's do this together. And that's also a self-regulation tool for them too.
Yeah, I love that. Have you ever done any breath work practices?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm part of a membership program, and we had an episode on the podcast. If you're listening and you want to go back and listen to that, with Stevie Wright, who is the founder of the Breath Channel. And she's got some amazing breathwork practices in there that take 5-10 minutes, not very long. Some are even shorter. And that would be even a great addition if that's something that, you want to check out. So if you're listening and you haven't checked out breathwork, I've recommended breathwork to a lot of my clients. It's a quick and easy way to get grounded again, to get present again, to kind of notice some of those things. So I love that.
It's
Absolutely.
so great, and there's a book too I read recently called Breath by James Nestor, and it's really the the what is it, the lost art of an old science or something like that is a tagline. And it's, breathing is so natural, we don't think about it, but it's really the connector, and it's a big connector to the mind body. And when we start to think about ourselves as holistic human beings, we have to connect that mind and body together. We are both. And if you want to make some change, you have to bring your body along for the ride. It just
Yeah,
can't be think happy thoughts and everything's fine. It doesn't work that way. Your body needs to come along with you, and your breath is one of the easiest ways to get that connection going.
for sure. For sure. All right. Well, let me ask. So, someone who is experiencing toxic positivity in their lives, right? Like maybe realizing it after listening to this episode, or was already a little bit aware before and not sure how to like flip the script. What are some simple things they can do? The breath is an awesome reminder. I love how you set the alarms in your phone. That's so smart. What are some other simple things they can do to really like flip that script from toxic positivity to alignment to positive psychology?
So, one of the biggest things is feel your feelings. It is safe to feel your feelings. And this is part of it, I think, too, as women, especially like that whole holding it together and not wanting to be too emotional. we ignore a critical part of our humanness that needs to be nourished. Again, not just for ourselves, but for our children, for the people. My 8-year-old has no problem telling me when she's angry. In fact, the whole neighborhood sometimes knows when she's angry, right? I mean, let's just be real about that. But then you get to a certain age and it is no longer acceptable for you to have these crazy tantrums when you're feeling these big feelings, right? But I just saw recently Turning Red, the Pixar film. I don't know if you've seen it, but
Yes.
that is a beautiful example of like these big emotions. And the truth is, the adults can relate to this too. And I love how they portrayed the grown-ups in that movie too. But anyway, I digress. The important thing here is that we need to find a way to express our emotions so that they are released from our body so we can be clean and clear to make aligned decisions. Because if we are just stuffing our emotions down because we're afraid to feel them, we're afraid if we crack open a little door of how we're feeling, we're afraid of what's on that other side of that door. And I've been there. I mean, prior to my divorce, I was unhappily married for a really long time. And so emotions didn't feel safe for me because I was afraid of what was going to happen if I opened that door. And how did that manifest? Well, I had back problems. My skin was all irritated. I had headache. I mean, we know this up here in our heads, but when it comes down to actually doing it, this is where the rubber meets the road and we really need to take some action. So, in order to navigate around toxic positivity, you have to confront yourself with the fact that it's not always good all the time. And that is perfectly okay. It is beautiful to feel anger, sadness, resentment, frustration, fear, anxiety, rage. All of those are big, beautiful emotions that are valid and okay. They don't always feel good, but emotions need to be felt. And again, they are felt in the body. So, some of the ways to feel through some of these things is, go to a rage room. This is something that I've done with my clients. I've hosted rage room events by me, that there's a space, there's something that's called like ice smash rooms or whatever. Brought my kids, right? And it's just, you go into a room and just smash things, and letting out that anger, letting out that rage in a really safe space. Another thing to do is I bought a little punching bag from Amazon. It fits really nicely on my desk. And anytime I just need to, boom, just punch something, I do it because I have to, because afterwards I feel great. Go for a run. Another thing you can do is let out a really big primal scream. I mean, I'm not talking about like screaming at your kids. That's like a different thing. I'm talking about like going into your car or someplace safe and just rolling up the windows and just, like as loud as you can. That is going to release all of those emotions that you then can come out of that, because emotions are temporary. We don't have to attach to them. We don't have to become that emotion. We let them pass through, we release, and then we can move forward, because the only way to eliminate toxic positivity is to, face the music and be okay when things aren't okay, because they will be okay.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like releasing the toxins, right? Like,
Yes.
we recently had a conversation with a nutritionist in our Biz Management Club program, and she said, You got to release the toxins to regulate your hormones. How do you do that? You sweat, like you do it in a way like this, right? So, this is your way of releasing the toxic emotions, right? Punching the bag, screaming. I remember I used to take kickboxing, and that was a fabulous way to just get rid of some of that stress, right? Like, literally punching a bag is really therapeutic.
Mm-hmm. Or a pillow, right? We all have pillows, and the thing is, your kids will be fine. Shut the door. Mommy needs 10 minutes. No one's gonna die, right? Like, mommy needs 10 minutes. Shut the door and you do what you need to do. And again, and I can't stress this enough, this is about you twofold, showing up for your kids in a way where you can hold space for their big emotions. So you're not snapping at them and you're not short tempered with them, right? And you're also showing them an example of how an adult can manage and process some of these really big emotions. My kids know, they've seen me punch the bag before, right? They've seen me cry. They know that crying is also just a release of an emotion. It doesn't have to mean anything, but we're so quick to judge the tears. I shouldn't be crying about this. Crying is weakness. It's not safe to cry. I should, be okay with it. No, crying is your body's way of releasing emotion. And those who are close to me know that if I'm not crying every day, something's wrong with me. Because it's just like there just needs to be, that's how my body releases emotion, whether it's happy emotion or gratitude or some sort of anger or frustration. That's just how my body is, and I've come to understand how to listen to my body really attunely, and I just give it what it needs. It needs to cry right now, let's cry. It needs to punch a bag, let's punch a bag.
Yeah. I've heard that before. I had a coach once say she made it a goal to cry every day to make that release happen. And, I never thought about it that way, but it's so true. It's so true.
Mm-hmm. And that works for some people. It doesn't work for other people, and that's also okay. There isn't a one size fits all. I mean, I have lots of people who dance. They dance it out. To put on some of your favorite tunes and like just dance it out. Anytime you are moving your body in a way that allows for release, that's how you're serving yourself. And again, we forget about our bodies. We forget we have bodies. We're in our heads. We want to think our way through these emotions, and you can't. You have to feel your way through them.
Yeah, I love that. All right, Jen, on that note, we're going to head over to the lightning round, where we're not going to talk about anything related to this.
Okay, sounds good.
We're just going to talk about you randomly, so our listeners can get to know you on a more personal level. Are you ready?
Sure. I'm so ready.
All right. Tell us, what book are you reading right now?
Ooh, I'm actually reading Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski, and it's all about female sexuality, and important for everyone to read, but especially women.
Love that. Okay. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Flying. I'd love to fly.
Okay. What's something most people don't know about you?
I spent a semester in college in Australia.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah, it was super fun.
All right. Nail salon, hair salon, or spa. You can only pick one place to visit for the rest of your life. Which one is it?
Oh, definitely spa. Hands down.
Yeah. Would you consider yourself an introvert or extrovert?
Definitely an extrovert. COVID time was very difficult for me. I missed my people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what's your get it done song that you like to rock out to?
Oh my gosh. So I was a former music teacher. So those music questions are always really hard. Honestly, I wrote my book to 90s pop music.
Yes.
That was my jam.
Yes.
Just that was it. Just 90s pop. Anything. Yeah.
One specific jam?
One specific jam. I would say anything but Alanis Morissette is kind of my jam. I'm gonna be really
awesome.
big about that, but yes.
Okay, we have a little bit of a connection here. I recently went to an Alanis Morissette concert and relived all my middle school feelings at that concert.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Oh, I love that.
All right. Before we wrap up today's episode, please tell our listeners where they can find you after the show.
Sure. So easiest place is empowerededucator.com. And actually on there is a really great free resource that you can get that gives you 10 ways for beating burnout. And essentially it's 10 self-regulation techniques that you can have and you can do real time. So when you're feeling activated, you can do any one of these things and come right back down to center and move on with your day feeling really good about yourself. So I'd love to offer that to your listeners. It's been a really good resource for lots of folks.
Amazing. Well, we will definitely link to that in the show notes so anybody can grab it. And thank you so much for being on the show. This was awesome.
Thank you for having me. It's been great to talk with you.
You've been listening to the Mama Work It podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and would love if you could take a quick minute to leave me a review on whichever platform you're listening from, and maybe even send a note to a fellow mama friend recommending it. Reviews and recs help this podcast grow and reach more like-minded, awesome moms. And if you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click that button so we can stay in touch, girl. By the way, if you haven't checked out the Mama Work It website, please do. There are lots of free resources and great articles there that can help you with the juggle of work life, mom life, wife life, fill in the blank life. So head on over. Thanks again for being part of the tribe. I'll see you soon, but in the meantime, keep on working it, mama.